Happy game day, fellas. Week 3 is
Game
here.
day.
We have some big matchups. Guys, if you look at the Week 3 matchups, this is a big week for a lot of teams because we have two 0-2 teams going up against two 2-0 teams. So
Yep.
if those 0-2 teams can get in the win column, it's really going to bunch these teams together in terms of the standings, or these 2-0 teams can separate themselves even more. And that brings us to our first matchup where the Houston Roughnecks are going to Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay Vipers have their first home game at Raymond James Stadium. But, man, Aaron Murray, Kenny, he hasn't practiced all week. And then in come the 2-0 Houston Roughnecks, who are just on fire right now, firing on almost all cylinders. So my question to you is, if Aaron Murray doesn't play in this game, do the Vipers have any hope of pulling out the upset at home?
Yeesh. I mean, you want to talk about a tale of two cities. Houston, Tampa. Not great. Not great. I mean, both of these teams couldn't be going in more opposite direction. Houston, he's looking like the team to beat in the West. Tampa's looks like they might be the worst team in the entire league. No, I don't think so. I don't think if Murray doesn't play, they don't have any shot. And to be honest, I think if Murray plays, they don't have a shot. This is a team that hasn't scored. This is a team that has not scored an offensive touchdown in 2 games. Their defense has scored more touchdowns than their offense, and they're playing the best offense in the league. Like, I was worried in the first 2 games with St. Louis and LA scoring enough points to beat Houston, and because with offense being at such a premium, I for sure have zero confidence that whether Murray plays or not, that Tampa can score at all on Houston, much less enough to even compete with them. I think this is going to be probably the most lopsided game of the weekend. I think the final score is going to be something like 37-14. That's my prediction.
Yeah, Glesson, I think what's been so impressive about Houston so far is not just their offense, but their defense has been very opportunistic with turnovers and sacks and putting their offense in short fields and positions to score. And then the offense that's been, led by PJ Walker is capitalizing on those opportunities with touchdowns. That's why they're excelling so much. But the defense is really what's getting things kind of going in Houston.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And, when we talk about how their defense has been able to do it, look at the first half of both games, guys. Defense was able to really kind of identify themselves early as being dominant, tackle for losses, creating turnovers, and allowing the Houston offense to get out to a fast start, right? There was no parallel, really a lot of parallel pass there. You could say, LA hung in for a little bit, but they really let their presence known early and often in the first game. And for most of the second game as well, I think St. Louis kind of had their number there near the fourth quarter and all the way to the end of the game. But they've been a pleasant surprise on defense. I think the Vipers will have all that they can handle on offense as well. I think what's also interesting to note is I might be going with the do theory here, guys. Maybe the do theory. The do theory is the Vipers will score their first touchdown, but the Vipers will not get close. The line is 6.5 for Houston. I think Houston covers. I think Houston covers big. Over under is 45.5. I'm actually going to go the under there. I think Houston's going to score, but I don't think the Vipers are going to score. So I'm going to go under the 45, and then I think Houston's going to win the game outright. Let's call it 27-6.
It's crazy because I'm still convinced, you can't budge me on this, that Tampa is one of the most talented rosters in the league. I really think that. But when your quarterback situation is as much of a mess as it is for the Vipers right now, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you have Dan Williams out at wide receiver or Nick Truesdale, the most athletic tight end in the game, or two, big bruising running backs in Jacquizz Patrick and Davion Smith. It doesn't matter because when your quarterback is playing below average and the quarterback position has been so inconsistent. Aaron Murray, when he's played, has not been good. Then he's been injured, and they've been switching back between Cornelius and Quentin Flowers. There's no identity on the offensive side of the ball. So I can't find a way to go with the Vipers at home. As much as I want to see these teams stay close in the standings, I think the Houston Roughnecks are going to win big. If I have to throw a number out there, 31-17. Why the hell not? So I think we're all going with Houston.
Yeah,
Let's move to the second game on Saturday. I think this one could be the game of the weekend. Both of these teams got their first win last week in week 2, and the Seattle Dragons are home once again. It's going to be interesting to see if they can give an encore in terms of the crowd that they brought and the noise that they brought. 30,000 to their first home game. In come Landry Jones, Bob Stoops, and the Dallas Renegades, who finally kind of seem like they found themselves on offense when Landry Jones coming back. Kenny, do you think that's going to continue to trend in the right direction versus Seattle defense that's been playing pretty good for these first couple of weeks?
Yeah, and a lot of people probably look at the week 1 score and see that DC won 31-19, and they go, wow, Seattle's defense gave up 31 points. But if you didn't really watch that game or you didn't really dive into the box score, you got to realize 12 points came from a block punt that was returned for a touchdown and a pick six. Yep. So really, they didn't give up that many points on defense. And then last week, obviously, they played Tampa. They gave up just a small handful of points. So their defense has played really well. They've had a pick six last week. They've shown that they can hang in there. They can get pressure on the opposing offenses. So I'm very interested to see what their own offense can do. If Seattle's offense shows up on Saturday, I agree with you, Riley. I think this is the game of the weekend if their offense shows up. If it doesn't, I'm a little concerned because I think Landry Jones and Dallas finally got clicking in the second half of last week, and they really started piling on the points. So I'm a little concerned if Seattle can hang with them. But if they get their offense going, if Brandon Silvers gets going, I really do think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be somewhat of a close game regardless. I think they're going to have the home field advantage with 30,000 people rocking, and they're going to have their defense is going to keep it respectable. They're going to keep them close. At the end of the day, I would say I still lean Dallas. I think Dallas wins. My guess would say 27-24. I think Seattle covers that 4.5, but I think Dallas ends up pulling it out.
Yeah, it's to me, it's the second best game of the weekend when I look at all these matchups. We'll get to the other one later. But I think the big matchup here is going to be how does Seattle's offense grow from the last 2 weeks, right? Last week, they struggled for the most part against the Tampa Bay Vipers. I thought they did some really nice things on offense against the DC defenders.
Especially the first half.
Especially the first half. Can they take that next step? Can Silvers take that next step? Can they get some things going in the running game? I love Seattle on defense. I think they're extremely talented. I think they're going to be one of the best defenses in the league. But is the offense going to be able to keep up with Dallas? Because I think Dallas is going to be able to get its points, right? Mm-hmm. What we saw from Landry Jones last week in the third quarter and in the fourth quarter, him stretching the offense down the field, being able to hit guys, big plays down the sideline. He was effective in the red zone as well, as you see right there.
And the way he used his tight ends, Glass, that was
love Donald Parham.
Price and
Parham, love him. Yeah, he's a matchup nightmare. So it's going to be interesting to see how Seattle kind of deals with that. But can the Seattle offense keep up with the Dallas offense? And I don't think that they can. So I'm going Dallas in this game. I think Dallas covers at the -4. Over-under is at 43. I'm actually going to take the under in that one as well because I think Seattle's defense will play well, but I don't think Seattle has enough firepower on offense yet to keep up. So going under that 43. And then if I had to throw a score out there, I'm going 20-13.
Yeah, I think the matchup for me to watch is so far the Seattle run defense has been maybe the most shocking and impressive thing from Seattle so far this season. They really did a good job of stopping the DC defenders' running game for the entire game. They did pretty well last week with Tampa Bay. I know that they were a mess at quarterback, so you really can't take too much out of that game, but still they were impressive. So it's going to be a key, the Seattle defense being able to stop the Dallas running attack that finally got going last week. Cameron Artis-Payne and Dunbar both averaged over 7 yards per carry. Dunbar was getting involved in the screen game out of the backfield. That really right there is what I think Dallas needs to continue to do, is commit to the run game and give Landry Jones those opportunities downfield off of the run game. So if Dallas can build on what they started last week in the run game versus the Wildcats, I think if they start, gashing the Seattle Dragons for big gains, it's really going to open up things for Landry Jones and that passing attack with Jeff Badette. We mentioned the tight ends. Jazz Ferguson, if he comes back. They have weapons on the outside, so I like Dallas's offense just too much not to pick them in this game. So I'm going to go with Dallas, and I'm going to go I think it's going to be close. I think maybe 27-20, around there. I think a touchdown or so. I think that home crowd is going to keep the Dragons in it. I like how the Dragons have been playing these first 2 weeks. They've never given up, and it wasn't for a bad couple of Brandon Silver's throws. They could potentially be 2-0. They were playing well versus the DC Defenders for most of that game, but I think the Renegades are too much in this one, so I'm going to go 27-20. Let's go to Sunday. Guys, the Guardians, who knows what's going on with that team right now? Matt McGloin, I've never seen anything like it in my life. A guy that was so willing to throw all of his teammates and his coaching staff under the bus. They got to regroup quick because they're heading to the Dome for the Battlehawks' first game, professional football game at home in how many years since the Rams left? It's been a while. I think that place is going to be kind of loud, just to guess. And the Battlehawks are playing pretty damn well on top of it. They're one of those teams that you need to watch out for. They played Houston very close. They had opportunities to win that game last weekend, and Tamu has really been impressive at the quarterback position. So, Kenny, what do the Guardians have to do to regroup and go steal a game at the Dome?
Man, they've got to do a lot. They've got to start establishing the run. They have not been able to run the ball at all either.
It's been ugly. It's been ugly in 2 weeks. Yeah.
And you can't have Matt McGloin dropping back 30, 40 times a game, slinging the ball all over the field and win the game. It's just not going to happen. They have to find a way to run the football. And they couldn't pick a worse week to be coming off such a disastrous dumpster fire, which was week 2 for them. Like, they couldn't pick a worse matchup coming back in, because now they're playing at the Dome with 30,000 screaming fans who have been dying for professional football to come back to St. Louis. And you're playing a St. Louis team that is extremely hot. Yeah, they're 1-1. I understand they're not undefeated, but they lost at the wire to a very, very good Houston team, like you just mentioned, Riley. So and look, and Vegas knows it too. Vegas knows it. New York is a 10.5 point dog.
Yeah. God, that's a huge line.
It's a massive line.
Huge. I think it's the biggest line we've seen so far, and that tells you what Vegas thinks about this matchup. And to be honest, I think it is too. As much flack as I gave Tampa and Houston, where I said that's going to be probably one of the most lopsided games, I think this is going to be right there with it. The early games are just really tough matchups for both days, for Saturday and Sunday. So at the end of the day, I don't think there's much New York can do other than hope and pray that Jordan Ta'amu gets off the bus and maybe rolls an ankle or something. I think I think St. Louis wins big here. I think St. Louis puts up about 35 points, and I would be surprised if New York puts up anything more than like 10 or 15. I'm going to go 32-10 final score, St. Louis.
Yikes. Cover your ears, New York fans.
No kidding. Yeah, I don't know, Riley, to answer your question, I'm going to kind of go off the same question you asked Kenny. I don't know what New York can do in order to win this game, to be honest with you. I think there's so many question marks on the offensive side of the ball. For me, the defense really has to play outstanding and has to keep St. Louis kicking field goals instead of scoring touchdowns, limit the big play, and just give their offense enough slack in order to stay in the game and maybe make a couple big plays down the field, which we saw that they're capable of doing. They did that week 1 against the Vipers. They were able to hit some big long passes down the field and able to set them up in the red zone. So I think the only chance New York has in this game is the red zone defense has to be outstanding. They can't make plays, and they've got to be able to create a turnover or two just to keep their offense in the game enough to where you're not out of it. Like at halftime, they were out of it last week. Everything was out of it. Their body language, the mental part of the game, all of it was out. But the score was also out of control because the way they were playing, there was no way they were coming back. So if the defense can keep this close, or play well on Sunday, I think that they have a chance to keep it close for most of the game. At the end of the day, I think St. Louis is too much for them to handle. I think St. Louis breaks a couple big plays at the end of the game. I think St. Louis wins the game. The line is at 10.5. St. Louis covers that line at 10.5. And they cover that line 10.5. I have them winning 24-6. Over under is 40.5. I'm going to go ahead and take the under in that. I think St. Louis does a lot of really good things on offense, but they haven't shown the big explosive plays down the field like you see from DC and that you see from Houston. So I don't think they're going to score a ton of points, but I think they're going to win this game handily and they're going to pull away at the end.
Yeah, they've really done it with their legs. I mean, Tamu in the first game, he had that 77-yard run. I think he hit Washington, LaDainian Washington, for that screen pass that he took to the house. That was another big play. But, yeah, big chunk plays down the field has not been St. Louis's game. Chuck Long has done an amazing job with this offense, taking over for Doug Meacham, who left a week into training camp. I think it's been the most surprising thing, maybe in the entire league, is just how well St. Louis's offense has been. And I'm not trying to overreact. I'm really not, because last week may have just been one of those weeks where it was just nothing was working. McGloin was completely off. It may have just been one of those weeks. I don't think New York is that bad, because we saw how good the defense was in week 1. We saw the explosive playmaking ability of Mikhail McKay, Pearson, all of those receivers. But they are going to have to make some plays on defense. They're going to have to create turnovers early and get Tamu uncomfortable and off of his game. They're going to have to stuff Christine Michael, Matt Jones in that running game to really put even more pressure on the rookie quarterback. If they can do that, they have a chance. But after last week, it's hard for me to have any faith in McGloin, especially not even just how poorly he played, but just how he reacted to the poor play and just the way that he conducted himself as the leader of the offense and the franchise, basically. That's not a good sign for your team moving forward. So they have a lot of regrouping to do, figuring things out. And until they show me that they've regrouped, I'm going to go with St. Louis here. I don't think there's any way they lose in front of this. It's going to be a crazy atmosphere, guys. Wow. It's going to be wild. And I'm looking forward to watching it. I think St. Louis is going to win. I think they're going to win pretty big. I'm going to go 32-14 St. Louis. So, Gless, I'm assuming that this is your game of the week because you haven't brought it up.
This is.
Up until now, there's only one game left. The 2-0 DC Defenders are heading to the 0-2 LA Wildcats. They're going cross country. So this is the revenge game, Gless. You have all of the LA talent that was shipped out in Rashad Ross and Anthony Johnson coming back to claim revenge. Are they going to do it is the question. What does it look like to you in terms of the DC Defenders heading to LA and taking on a Wildcats team that desperately needs a win?
Yeah, this game is going to be interesting in how I think it's going to play out. I think LA is going to give them a game. I really do. I like what I saw from the LA offense last week in the second half. They started to get some things going with Josh Johnson. Nelson Spruce is a bear to handle. I think that they're going to be pretty productive on offense. I think it's going to be back and forth. I think in the fourth quarter, DC makes a couple plays on defense, though. I think that they make probably another play on special teams in order to kind of seal the game about midway through the fourth. I do think this game will be a little bit closer than the experts think. Right now, Vegas has the line at -8.5 for DC. So initially, I think that spread just kind of takes us all look back. Well, like that, DC, may go ahead and blow them out. I do think DC covers that line, but I think it's done in a way to where they get a couple scores late. Again, like I said, maybe it's a big play on defense. Maybe it's a big play on special teams. But I think LA gives them a run. I really do. Again, like I said, I really like what they did on offense last week. I think they finally get it together enough on defense to where they can keep the game intact, that it doesn't get out of hand early. So I think they keep it close. DC ends up winning. I think DC ends up covering. And then I'm also going with the over. I think it hits the over. Over is 44. I think they barely hit the over at 45. So
Yeah, it's gonna be a really good game. This was my game of the week when I initially saw it, and hopefully it's not a repeat of last week's game of the week when I had DC in New York.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's a little close. But Gus, I honestly, I can't really go off of more what you said. I can't really disagree with you on that. I think LA is going to keep it tight. I think Josh Johnson's second week starting, the offense is going to finally start finding a little cadence, a little rhythm. Nelson Spruce is, the best receiver in the league, which is awesome because I legit think we've got like 3 or 4 of the best receivers in the entire league squaring off against each other. I mean, you're talking DeAndre Tompkins, Rashad Ross, and Nelson Spruce are probably 3 of the top 5 receivers in the entire XFL. And not only that, you throw Eli Rogers on top of it and Kari Lee. Like, there's a lot of offensive firepower in this game on Sunday, and then Cardell versus Josh Johnson. You're talking probably 2 of the top 4 quarterbacks in the league, 2 of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league. So offensively, I think we're in for a really good show. I think we're in for a really good treat. I do think that DC ends up making a play on defense, a play on special teams, like they've done the first 2 weeks of the season where they've had pick sixes, they've had block punts. They almost had another block punt against New York last week. They just missed one. So I think LA makes a play on either defense and special teams that sets it apart. However, I don't think DC covers. I think LA covers against the spread. I think the final score is going to be 29-25 DC.
So I think, Gless, the key to this game, we all know that Pep wants to establish the run, and they really haven't been able to do that up until this point. They did it a little bit in the second half versus the Guardians, but I think a lot of that had to do with the Guardians' defense just being totally gassed.
Just wearing down.
They were on the field like
I
the
agree.
entire day.
They were gassed.
I really think Pep is going to stress physicality, establishing the run game, versus this LA defense that gave over 7 yards a carry to the Dallas running backs last week. I think this is the game where we see the DC running attack really get going. Cardell Jones just needs to avoid those throws that he's tended to make. He's made a lot of great plays, but he has made a couple of throws in traffic in double, triple coverage. And you saw what happened to Landry Jones last week when he made those couple of mistakes. The Wildcats made him pay with turnovers. And now that Josh Johnson has another game under his belt, we'll see if they can capitalize off those turnovers. That's really what the difference has been. It's been a very small difference between teams that are capitalizing on turnovers, Houston, DC, that make them 2-0, and teams like LA that are creating turnovers on defense, but they're not capitalizing. The offense is sputtering, the offense is stalling, and they're not able to finish drives. That's the difference between teams like that and teams like LA. So if they can get Cardell to make some bad throws, put some pressure on him, they've got a shot. But I'm worried about this LA rushing defense versus a DC rushing offense that hasn't established themselves yet. But I know what Pep is thinking right now, Gless. He wants to establish that run.
Right.
Because his whole offense is centered around it. The play action, the bootlegs, the deep passes, they've been successful at it, but will they be able to keep that consistent throughout the season if they can't get the run going? So I know Pep is really going to be stressing that. I think that Josh Johnson is going to get his feet under him. I think the offense is going to look better. I think kind of what you said, Kenny, we're in for a treat in terms of offense. I think we're going to see a lot of points in this game. I really do.
I agree.
So I'm going to go with DC. I know it's boring because we've all agreed on every pick, I think. Gless, I was really hoping you were going to take the Wildcats there.
I know. Almost did, but almost.
I'm going to go with DC over LA. I'm going to go 34-28. I think it's going to come down to the last couple possessions, but I think that DC, they've been creating turnovers on defense. I think that's going to be the same case this weekend. So I'm going with the DC Defenders. I think both 2-0 teams are going to go to 3-0. Personally, I would love to see some of these 0-2 teams get in the win column just to keep the standings close because we want this league to be as competitive as possible. So we'll see how it plays out. Let us know in the comment section below what your picks are. Do you agree with us? Do you disagree with us? We obviously all agree with each other. So let us know in the comment section what your picks are for week 3. It's good. It's a big week for the XFL.
Huge.
For this reason alone. We need close games. We need quarterback play to continue to be on the rise. And we need quarterbacks like Landry Jones and Josh Johnson to stay healthy, stay on the field, and get their feet under them. Because we saw at the end of last week's game, between the Renegades and the Wildcats, what that looked like when those quarterbacks were starting to feel comfortable. It was an offensive outpouring in that fourth quarter. So I'm expecting a lot more offense this weekend, but I'm hoping for close games. So we'll see when it comes to week 3 of the XFL. Stay tuned on XFL Chalk Talk for the latest content, and make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the notification bell so you get all of our latest content when it's posted. And I'll make this plug while I'm at it, since we're on game day. Follow us on the Discord app. Live chat with the show and other XFL fans throughout the weekend on the Discord. It was a lot of fun last weekend. We had people that were live at games sending pictures, telling us about the atmosphere. We were breaking down plays and players. It was really a lot of fun last weekend. We'll put the link in the description, so make sure you join the Discord app and get involved in the conversation there. But it should be a fun week in the XFL. We'll see what happens. Stay tuned on XFL Chalk Talk for the latest coverage.
What's up, football fans? This is Coach Gless. Want to know how to listen to all of our segments on the go? You can subscribe to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, and iHeartRadio. Subscribe on your favorite podcast platform today. And don't forget to rate us and give us that 5-star review.